Imagine spending your whole life trying to get inside the heads of, well, society's most violent predators. Staring into that darkness, what does that do to someone? I mean, how do you hold on to your own humanity?
It's a heavy question, right? How does facing that kind of evil day in, day out reshape how you see everything good, evil, maybe even yourself?
Exactly. And today, that's what we're diving into. We're exploring the really incredible career and the personal transformation of Dr. Roger Dew. He was a genuine pioneer in criminal profiling.
Yeah, foundational. We've got excerpts from his book, Between Good and Evil, and we'll unpack the whole story. The FBI's behavioral science unit, how it evolved,
Yeah.
the chilling things learned from actually talking to serial killers face to face, and then Dr. Dew's own deeply personal journey to find meaning beyond just catching bad guys.
So our mission for you today, listening in, is to really pull out the most powerful insights from all this. It's not just about what they discovered about the criminal mind, but crucially, how all that discovery changed Dr. Dew himself. His views on good, evil, and maybe surprisingly, the power we all have to make a difference.
Yeah, prepare for some pretty startling facts and some really moving reflections along the way.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning of this journey for Dr. Dew. People might know the name, maybe from the FBI's BSU, or even, pop culture references like Hannibal Lecter, inspired partly by guys like him.
Right.
But his paths didn't start there. It began way earlier,
Yeah.
far from, the FBI headquarters.
That's absolutely right. His early life really set the stage, you could say. Experiences that forged his path towards law enforcement. His dad was a dedicated cop, that was one thing.
Yeah.
But also something really personal. He was brutally beaten up as a young man. And that experience, it didn't just hurt him physically, it ignited this furious desire to hunt down the people who did it. That drive, that intensity, it kind of stayed with him.
So these weren't just random events, they were formative.
Definitely catalysts, yeah.
And his early police work, it wasn't exactly Quantico, was it? He was in Clare, Michigan. He called it Michigan's Wild Wild West.
Yeah, sounds about right. And that's where his natural curiosity really started to mesh with his psychology studies. He was putting it into practice on the street.
So you see those early profiling instincts.
You do, yeah. Even in a seemingly minor case, this burglary at Punch's house, he noticed these unusual shoe prints, beetle boots, he called them, and he connected them to a local politician's son, this kid, Donnie. Eventually, Donnie gets arrested after shooting at a hospital Santa Claus, believe it or not.
Wow, okay.
And it turns out there was this whole progression from peeping Tom behavior to something darker. They even found a garage full of the victim's clothes. So this was Dew doing practical psychology, reading behavior way before it was formalized at the FBI.
It's incredible how those street-level observations, plus the academic side, just laid the groundwork. He started FBI training in '68, but the psych training then wasn't quite what we think of now.
Oh, not at all. He actually described the first FBI psychology lecture he attended as vague and perfunctory. Pretty dismissive. But things were about to change, big time. Thanks to Howard Bud Tayton and his revolutionary ideas, Tayton's often called the father of modern criminal profiling.
All right, Bud Tayton. And he built on earlier work, didn't he? Like
Right.
Dr. James Brussel and the Mad Bomber case back in the 50s.
Exactly. Tayton really championed Brussels' idea.
Yeah.
You need to exhaustively study the crime scene, every detail, to understand the person who did it.
And Brussels' profile of the Mad Bomber was just uncannily accurate.
Astonishingly so. Obsessive, paranoid, Eastern European, Catholic, heavyset, middle-aged, meticulous dresser, double-breasted suit even.
What?
And that profile led the police straight to George Metesky, who fit almost every single point. That was the shift. It wasn't about predicting behavior from personality anymore. It was about studying the behavior left behind at the scene to predict the characteristics of the offender.
Kind of turning it inside out.
Precisely. It started moving profiling towards a science.
So then, Dew becomes chief of the Behavioral Science Unit, the BSU, in 1979. That feels like a pivotal moment. He believed the FBI should be doing investigations using this, not just teaching about it.
Absolutely.
But you can imagine, within the FBI back then, this very traditional sort of evidence-first culture. There must have been pushback against these soft sciences.
Oh, huge resistance. A lot of the old guard, the veteran agents, they were deeply skeptical. They dealt in fingerprints and ballistics, not, psychological speculation.
Right.
But the BSU started proving its value pretty quickly. They took on the cases nobody else could solve, the really bizarre homicides, the serial crimes, the child murders that had local PDs stumped.
They were connecting dots others couldn't see.
Exactly. Across different states, different jurisdictions, finding
And they
patterns.
had real successes that silenced some critics, right?
Yeah.
Like that West Hartford synagogue arson case in '83.
Yeah, that was a big one. The initial thought was, okay, anti-Semitic hate crime, probably an outside group.
Makes sense.
But the BSU profile pointed somewhere completely different. A troubled young Jewish kid, thin, small, emotionally troubled, maybe a speech impediment or bad acne, very specific and internal to the community.
Which must have seemed counterintuitive.
Totally. But then they arrested Barry Doveshush, a 17-year-old who fit that profile perfectly. That arrest, it wasn't luck. It massively boosted the BSU's credibility. It showed they can see past the obvious assumptions.
And they had data to back it up, too.
They did. A survey in 1981 looked at, I think, 192 of these really tough old dog cases they consulted on. In almost half, their input led to identifying a suspect or significantly refocusing the investigation.
Wow.
And in 15 cases, the profile itself identified the suspect directly. For cold cases, that was unheard of. It was undeniable proof this stuff worked.
And the Savalas kidnapping in '82, that sounds like a pressure cooker situation. You said mental speed chess.
It really was. They had this 44-page manifesto from the kidnapper. Dew and his team read it, analyzed it, and generated a profile in just 90 minutes.
90 minutes.
For 44 pages.
Yeah. And the profile was incredibly detailed. White male, late 30s, early 40s, college educated, deep religious background, maybe ex-seminarian professional, married, kids, recent marital stress, possibly military.
That's specific.
That's specific. And the guy they caught, Don Benny Anderson, leader of this group called the Army of God, he matched nearly every point. It just proved how much behavior, even in chaos, leaves a signature.
So the BSU is gaining traction and specializing, but then comes this really dark and maybe controversial step going straight to the source, talking to the killers.
Right. This was Bob Ressler and John Douglas's idea back in the late 70s.
Yeah.
Let's go into the prisons and interview these violent offenders.
Not for therapy, obviously. No, not at all. It was purely for investigative insight, to understand the why and the how. Why do they do these horrific things? How do they choose victims? How do they operate? They figured if they could understand the minds already caught, they could get better at catching the ones still out there, maybe even prevent future crimes.
And those interviews, Ed Kemper, Ted Bundy,
Mm.
the insights must have been just bone-chilling.
Horrific, yeah. Bundy, of course, was a master manipulator, but eventually, near his execution, he gave what was basically a confession to over 30 murders.
And he described the act itself.
He did. And it's profoundly disturbing. He said, you feel the last bit of breath leaving their body? A person in that situation is God.
Chilling.
It gave this awful clarity into what he called the malignancy, this point where, for some individuals, the sexual urge, extreme violence become fused, inseparable. Understanding that wasn't just about being morbid, it was crucial for the profilers. It meant grappling with motivations that seemed almost inhuman.
Facing that constantly.
Yeah.
It must change you.
No question. And it led the BSU to develop these important typologies, too, ways to categorize killers to help investigators.
Like the organized versus disorganized distinction.
Exactly. That was huge. The organized killer, calculating, methodical, often psychopathic. Think of Gerard John Schaefer, who literally wrote instructions in prison on how to kill and dispose of bodies.
Unbelievable.
Versus the disorganized killer, like Richard Trenton Chase, the vampire killer of Sacramento, often driven by severe mental illness, leaving chaotic, almost ritualistic scenes. Knowing these types gave investigators, as Dew put it, fresh investigative eyes. It helped them know what kind of person they were likely looking for.
But as you said, facing this day in, day out, the personal cost must be immense. Dew saw it in others like Tayton and Douglas, this emotional, numbing isolation.
It's almost a survival mechanism, you imagine. He said his wife Sharon was his anchor, his connection to normalcy, the good in the world, while he dealt with the absolute worst.
His ballast against the darkness.
Yeah. But then, even as he was confronting evil professionally, tragedy struck much, much closer to home. It forced him to confront suffering in a way that was intensely personal and devastating.
Right, his wife Sharon's illness. It started with a fall, then surgery, a really grim prognosis.
Yeah, a friend, a former director at the National Institute of Mental Health, gave him the bad news. And Dew, the investigator, desperately searched medical journals for any hope, any survivor story.
And the vigil by her bed, telling their kids.
Heartbreaking, telling the children, if you have anything left to say to your mother, say it now. He wanted her final hours to be filled with love, not fear. He reminisced with her about their whole life together.
And her death just shattered him.
Completely. He said it made him question the existence of God, which led him, perhaps surprisingly, to enter the seminary. He needed a holy place, he said, to just grapple with his grief, to try and make sense of it all.
That shift from hunting evil to seeking solace, it's profound.
It really is. It marked a huge turning point, moving him towards thinking not just about darkness, but about the nature of good and where to find it when everything seems bleak.
Yet, even in the seminary, that analytical mind, that profiler's instinct, it didn't just switch off, did it? His, bullshit detector, as he apparently called it.
No, it definitely didn't. He encountered a woman claiming religious visions, another alleging involvement in satanic ritual abuse, and he applied the same critical thinking he'd used on cases.
And saw through it.
Pretty quickly, yeah. He recognized the signs of fabrication even when others around him were taken in. He even brought in research from Ken Lanning, an FBI expert on satanic cults, to kind of set the record straight within the seminary.
So that drive for truth, for objective reality, it was just ingrained.
Absolutely. It went deeper than his job title or his current setting. It makes you wonder, right? Does that kind of deep-seated way of analyzing the world ever really leave you?
Probably not. So after the seminary, he comes back, but with a changed perspective. He refocuses his private consulting firm, the Academy Group AGI. And he's different. He doesn't want those morally ambiguous cases anymore.
Right. He wanted his work to align with this new sense of purpose. And this fresh perspective proved really valuable, particularly in cracking some very tough cold cases. Profiling doesn't give you a name, but it can drastically narrow the search. It points investigators in the right direction.
Like the Martha Moxley murder case. AGI looked at it.
Yeah, they saw the overkill, the excessive violence, and crucially, the lack of defensive wounds and the fact her body was moved after she died suggested she knew her attacker, felt comfortable initially.
Which pointed away from a random intruder.
Exactly. It pointed towards someone she knew, possibly someone romantically entangled or spurned. Their analysis strongly suggested Michael Skakel fit that pattern. They called their report purposefully prejudicial, meaning it was designed to shake things up, to force investigators to look past old assumptions and consider the specific angle intensely. And ultimately, it did contribute to Skakel's conviction years later.
Then there was the Terry Brooks homicide, another cold case from '84.
Very complex. Initially looked like a robbery gone wrong. But AGI analyzed the crime scene, 4 different methods used to kill her. The level of violence, it screamed personal animus, deep-seated anger.
So again, someone she knew.
Almost certainly. Their focus landed on her fiancé, Alfred Scott Keefe. He lied consistently during their interview. Years passed, but a new detective, Nelson Whitney, picked up AGI's original profile. He used it, along with a clever interview strategy timed for the anniversary of the murder.
And got a confession?
A signed confession, backed up by solid DNA evidence found years earlier of pubic hair, fingernail scrapings, evidence from the murder weapon itself. It finally brought closure, especially for Terry's father, George, who was dying. He got the news just before he passed.
Wow. That shows the lasting impact of that initial behavioral work.
Absolutely. Decades later, it can still be the key.
But Du's journey didn't stop at just solving past crimes. He started looking forward, towards prevention.
Exactly. That became his real focus, moving from the back end, catching criminals after the fact, to the front end, trying to stop the violence before it happens.
Which led to things like the National Center for the Analysis of Violent Crime and the VSEP database.
Yes, VS, the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, a way to pool data on violent crimes from all over the country, look for links, identify serial offenders much faster. It was about foresight, coordination, prediction.
So how does this translate to, say, preventing violence in workplaces or schools? What was his advice there? It wasn't just about security cameras, was it?
No, not primarily. He said the first step isn't metal detectors, it's making sure you treat every employee with dignity.
Dignity. Where did that come from?
Directly from interviewing workplace killers, he found a common thread. Many felt deeply shortchanged or demeaned, disrespected, dehumanized at work. That feeling festered.
That's a powerful insight, and it led him to think more broadly about society.
It did. He'd point out, look, we basically know the demographics of who commits the vast majority, about 2/3 of violent crime in the U.S. It's often young men from broken homes facing specific disadvantages.
Right.
So the real question for society, he argued, isn't just how to catch them, but what are you going to do about it? How do we address the root causes? It completely shifted his perspective from just being a hunter to being an advocate for prevention, for systemic change.
And you saw this change in him personally, too,
Yeah.
moving away from that lone wolf, competitive FBI agent persona.
Definitely. He spoke about becoming less of an autonomous, competitive self, valuing teamwork more, being more open emotionally. He even started beginning meetings with a prayer for guidance, for a positive outcome, a big shift.
And finding new connections, new partnerships.
Yes, his marriage to Joanne Riddick, a clinical psychologist, brought him companionship and a shared interest in exploring philosophy, theology, and his volunteer work really summed up his new mission.
Working with kids.
Yeah, at a pastoral counseling center, helping angry, confused kids from really tough backgrounds. He saw it as restoring my own faith and giving something back. Trying to, in his words, short circuit perhaps just one small path of evil before it fully formed.
Using his understanding of darkness to try and foster light.
Beautifully put, yeah.
So we've traced this incredible arc, from the streets of Michigan to the forefront of FBI profiling, through immense personal loss and into this profound reevaluation of everything. Dew showed us evil is terrifyingly real, calculated sometimes.
Absolutely.
But he also came to believe that goodness is just as real, maybe even more fundamental. Immutable, pre-existing evil, and just as powerful.
He saw it as an ongoing struggle, a battle we're all part of. And he believed that evil often wins, or seems to win, mostly when good people, as he put it, through apathy, fear, or indifference, allow it to.
That puts the onus back on us, doesn't it? He asks us to think about the small things, the simple acts of kindness, the little interventions.
Yeah. And his vision for the future wasn't just about fancy new tech like air sampling for DNA or scent at crime scenes, though he saw potential there.
Right.
It was about a deeper understanding of people, even exploring ways to somehow read a victim's final moments of terror from evidence to learn how to prevent the next tragedy. He actually looked forward to a day when the BSU's methods might seem antiquated.
Because evil itself would be vanquished.
That was the hope, that success would mean their specific tools were no longer needed on the same scale.
So the final thought for you listening is this. Drawing from Dr. Dew's life, what small choice, what seemingly minor decision will you make today? Something that might just nudge things even slightly away from a path of harm or amplify the good in the world right around you.
Because if his journey teaches us anything, it's that in this constant struggle between good and evil, those individual choices really do matter. They add up.